Hello and welcome to another in our GLG property law series of podcasts. I'm Peter Lee, an accredited specialist in property law and part of the property law team here at GLG Legal. The topic I'd like to discuss today is the acquisition of a second home. This is often the goal of many people who have been lucky enough to purchase their family home. Often you'll be advised by your financial consultant that the best form of investment you can make is to repay the mortgage on that home. And that's probably true. Remember that your home mortgage payments are made out of your after-tax income. So if you're paying 7% on your mortgage, then you effectively got to earn 10% to cover the extra tax bill. Now, while this is good advice, it may not work out that well if your objective is to increase your property empire. The problem here is that when you buy an investment property, you want to take advantage of negative gearing. So, for example, if you buy an investment property for $1 million and borrow all of the money, you'll pay interest at 5% and you'll have a tax deduction of $50,000 per annum in the interest, as well as the other expenses and rates, meaning $60,000 of expenses, but unfortunately you're only going to receive $30,000 of rent, leaving you with a $30,000 loss. That is the essence of negative gearing. You will see from that a disproportionate part of that expense is the interest that you pay, $50,000 out of the $60,000. That's what makes negative gearing very attractive. Now, why do people do this? Primarily because they get a tax deduction on the way through, and when they sell the property at the end, it's a capital gain, and half of that gain should be tax-free. So that is a bit of a tax break. The government are looking at reviewing that, but for the moment, that's the way the law is. Now, while that's nice and simple and clean when you buy a new separate investment property, many people take a different route. They have, on advice of their financial consultants, made substantial repayments on their home. They've got to the stage where the business is going well, the house has gone up in value, they've got $500,000 or $600,000 equity in the home, and they think, right, time to buy a new home and rent out the old one. So they go and borrow $1 million, buy a beautiful new home, mortgage both properties to do that, and then rent out their old home. They would like to get the benefit of negative gearing, but there are a number of problems, and this is where you must speak to your accountant in structuring these things. In order for interest to be tax deductible, the purpose of the borrowing is the only relevant consideration. In the last example I gave you, the purpose of the borrowing of $1 million was to buy yourself a home. That's not an investment purpose. Therefore, the loan of $1 million would not be tax deductible. The fact that you've paid off the loan on your earlier home means that you don't get that big $50,000 tax deduction I mentioned before, so you really don't get the benefit of negative gearing. Now, there are ways around this, but it requires planning, and it requires long-term planning. You need to think about this early in the ownership of your family home. One way to get around this problem is, for example, to have an offset loan. So if you owe the bank $600,000, yes, you could repay $300,000 and reduce your mortgage accordingly, but many people have an offset loan, so they can put $300,000 into the offset loan, and that does effectively reduce the interest repayments. It has the same effect, but the money is kept separate. Why would you want to do that? Because then you can take that money and use that to buy you a new home and borrow money if need be for some other investment purposes. So that's one of many considerations. So I applaud you for the initiative of buying a home in the first place. I applaud you for the initiative of looking to buy an investment property. But my advice to you is it's really important to get financial and legal advice on the structuring for both of those things and to consider the tax implications. And remember that the taxes now are very broad. I've done a separate paper on stamp duty and land tax, which are now relevant considerations. As an interesting aside, when I started practicing law, you had to be a land baron to consider land tax. And by that I mean if you didn't own 20 properties, you didn't consider it. The land tax threshold hasn't changed in some 30, or hadn't changed much in some 30 or 40 years. It used to be you had to own $300,000 worth of real estate back in the day when land cost $20,000 a block, hence my figure of having 30 blocks of land before you had to worry about it. That same block of land is now worth $1 million, and the land tax threshold is still in the order of $500,000 or $600,000. So every house you own other than your home is probably going to attract land tax. So these things need to be considered. And that's a topic of a different paper which I'll be talking about soon. Capital gains tax is another very important issue. Your principal place of residence, of course, is tax-free, subject to certain rules and exceptions. Your investment property hopefully will be taxed on capital gains tax, but mixing the two, living in one for part of the time and having an investment property for another part of the time, creates a number of complications, and capital gains tax rules will apply. So you need to speak to your accountant and your lawyer to plan how that's going to work in your circumstances. Thank you for listening to this paper. If you like it, please tick the like button, and please refer to our website for many more papers and many links that will help you in this endeavour. Thank you.